Most people never get started on their dreams because they're waiting. Waiting for the perfect time, the perfect opportunity, the perfect plan. But here's what I've discovered. Perfection is the enemy of progress. While you're sitting there trying to create the perfect plan, life is passing you by. Someone else with half your talent but twice your action is out there making things happen. I remember a young man who came to one of my seminars years ago, bright fellow, had all these incredible ideas for a business. He'd been planning it for 7 years. 7 years. And you know what he had accomplished in those 7 years? The perfect business plan. Not a single customer, not a penny of revenue, not one tangible step forward, just a plan that kept getting more elaborate, more detailed, and frankly more unlikely to ever see the light of day. I asked him, what if instead of spending 7 years planning the perfect business, you had spent 7 days planning a good business and then used the rest of that time actually building it? The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. He'd been hiding behind perfection, using it as a shield against the possibility of failure. You see, perfection isn't just difficult to achieve, it's impossible. And that's by design. It keeps you trapped in preparation mode, never actually entering the game. Progress, on the other hand, is about movement. It's about taking that first step, even when you can't see the entire staircase. Think about it this way. When you plant a tree, do you get upset because it doesn't instantly become a fully mature oak? Of course not. You celebrate when it sprouts. You get excited when it grows an inch. You nurture it as it slowly, steadily progresses toward what it's meant to become. Your life, your business, your relationships, they all work the same way. They need progress, not perfection. Now, I'm not suggesting you put out shoddy work or set low standards. Quite the opposite. I'm suggesting you set the bar high, but understand that you'll need to build a ladder to get there, one rung at a time. Let me give you a formula I've taught for years. It's simple, but it's powerful. Your life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by change. And here's the key. Small, consistent changes compound over time to create remarkable results. Just like compound interest in your bank account, compound improvement in your life creates wealth beyond your imagination. So what does this look like in practice? It means reading 10 pages of a good book every day instead of waiting until you have time to read a whole library. It means saving $5 a day instead of waiting until you can invest $10,000. It means making one sales call today instead of planning to make 100 calls someday. Here's what happens when you embrace progress over perfection. You start building momentum. And momentum is a powerful force. Once you're in motion, it becomes easier to stay in motion. Once you've taken that first step, the second step doesn't seem so daunting. Before you know it, you've walked a mile, then 10 miles, then 100. I've known people who wanted to write a book. They talked about it for years, decades even. They were waiting until they had the perfect story, the perfect writing environment, the perfect amount of free time. Meanwhile, other less talented writers were sitting down every day, writing a page or two, making progress. And you know what? Those folks who focus on progress now have their books on shelves, while the perfectionists are still talking about writing someday. The difference between who you are today and who you'll be in 5 years comes down to two things: the books you read and the people you associate with. I'd add a third element to that: the actions you take consistently day after day. Not perfect actions, progressive actions. Here's another thing about perfection: it's subjective. What's perfect to you might be flawed to someone else. So you're chasing an impossible moving target. Progress, however, is measurable. You can see it, track it, celebrate it. You can look back at where you were a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, and see how far you've come. I want you to think about your health for a moment. Would it be better to exercise perfectly for 1 day or to exercise imperfectly but consistently for a year? The answer is obvious, isn't it? The same principle applies to your finances, your education, your relationships, your spiritual development. Consistent progress trumps occasional perfection every single time. Let me tell you about discipline. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. But here's what most people don't understand about discipline. It's not about massive, heroic efforts. It's about small, consistent actions that align with your values and objectives. It's about progress, not perfection. I've often said that success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day, while failure is simply a few errors in judgment repeated every day. It's the compound effect of daily disciplines that leads to success, just as it's the compound effect of daily errors that leads to failure. Some of you might be thinking, Jim, that sounds great, but what about excellence? Shouldn't we strive for excellence? Absolutely. But excellence isn't the same as perfection. Excellence is about doing the best you can with what you have where you are. Perfection is about an impossible ideal that keeps moving further away the closer you try to get to it. I've met too many talented people who never reached their potential because they were paralyzed by the gap between where they were and where they thought they should be. They couldn't accept progress because they were fixated on perfection. Don't let that be you. Here's a truth that might be hard to hear. Done is better than perfect. An imperfect book that's published will touch more lives than a perfect manuscript that sits in your drawer. An imperfect business that's operating will create more value than a perfect business plan that never gets implemented. An imperfect workout routine that you actually do is infinitely better than the perfect workout routine that you never start. Now, there's something important I want you to understand about progress. Progress isn't always linear. Sometimes you'll take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sometimes you'll feel like you're moving sideways or even backwards. That's normal. That's part of the journey. The key is to keep moving, keep learning, keep adjusting your course. I remember when I was first starting out as a speaker, I wasn't very good. In fact, I was downright terrible. But I kept at it. I spoke to small groups, to empty rooms sometimes. I studied great speakers. I practiced. I asked for feedback. And slowly, incrementally, I got better. Not perfect, better. And better was enough to build a career that's allowed me to reach millions of people around the world. If I had waited until I was the perfect speaker before getting on stage, I would never have spoken a single word in public. If I had given up after my first fumbling attempts, convinced that I'd never be perfect, I wouldn't be standing before you today. So what about you? What dream are you putting off because you're waiting to be perfect? What goal have you set aside because you can't see how to achieve it flawlessly? What talent are you hiding because you're afraid it's not good enough yet? I want to challenge you today to choose progress over perfection. Choose action over planning. Choose done over someday. Here's a simple exercise I'd like you to try. Think of one goal you've been postponing because you don't feel ready or because you're afraid you can't do it perfectly. Now, identify one small action you could take today, not tomorrow, not next week, but today that would move you 1 step closer to that goal. It doesn't have to be a big step, just a step. Then take it. That's how progress works. One small step, then another, then another. Before you know it, you've traveled further than you ever thought possible. You know, I've always been fascinated by how major achievements come about. Take the construction of a skyscraper, for instance. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens brick by brick, floor by floor by floor. The workers don't show up on Monday and expect to have a finished building by Friday. They understand that it's a process, that progress is made incrementally, and that each day's work builds on what came before. The same is true for your life. Your success won't happen overnight. It will happen day by day, decision by decision, action by action. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to make perfect decisions or take perfect actions. You just have to make good ones consistently over time. I've often told the story of the Chinese bamboo tree. You plant it and water it, but nothing happens for 4 years. No shoots, no growth, nothing visible to show for your efforts. You might think it's dead or that you're doing something wrong. But then in the 5th year, something miraculous happens. The bamboo tree grows 90 feet in just 6 weeks. The question is, did the bamboo tree grow 90 feet in 6 weeks? Or did it grow 90 feet in 5 years? The answer, of course, is 5 years. For those first 4 years, the tree was developing its root system, building a foundation strong enough to support its eventual growth. It was making progress, even when that progress wasn't visible. Your life works the same way. Sometimes you'll be working, learning, growing, developing, making progress without seeing immediate results. But if you stay the course, if you keep making those small, consistent efforts, the results will come, often in ways that will amaze you. I want to emphasize something important here. When I talk about embracing progress over perfection, I'm not giving you permission to be sloppy or careless. I'm not suggesting you lower your standards or accept mediocrity. What I am suggesting is that you redirect your focus from the end result to the process that will get you there. Think of it this way. A perfectionist focuses on the destination and gets frustrated that they haven't arrived yet. A progressionist focuses on the journey and celebrates each step along the way. Let me share another distinction that might help. There's a difference between excellence and perfection. Excellence is about doing your best with what you have. Perfection is about an impossible standard that can never be met. Strive for excellence, not perfection. I've known people who were so afraid of making a mistake that they never took a risk. They never started a business, never asked someone out on a date, never applied for that promotion, never wrote that book, never took that trip, all because they were waiting until they could do it perfectly. What a tragedy. What a waste of human potential. You know what's interesting about mistakes? They're often our best teachers. The person who makes no mistakes usually makes nothing at all. The person who's willing to make mistakes, learn from them, and keep moving forward, that's the person who makes progress. That's the person who eventually succeeds. I remember when I first started in business, I made plenty of mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing half the time. But I was willing to try to learn to adjust course when necessary. Each mistake taught me something valuable. Each setback contained a lesson. And slowly but surely I made progress. If I had waited until I knew everything, until I could do everything perfectly, I would never have started. And that would have been the biggest mistake of all. There's a concept in Japanese culture called kaizen. It means continuous improvement through small, incremental changes. Not big, dramatic, perfect changes, small, steady, progressive ones. This philosophy helped Japan rebuild its economy after World War II and turn companies like Toyota into global powerhouses. You can apply the same philosophy to your life. Don't try to change everything at once. Don't expect overnight transformation. Instead, focus on getting 1% better each day. That might not sound like much, but it compounds over time. If you get 1% better every day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better by the end of that year. That's the power of progress. I've noticed something about successful people over the years. They're not necessarily the most talented, the most intelligent, or the most privileged. But they almost always share one trait: they take action. They don't wait for conditions to be perfect. They start with what they have, where they are. They make progress even when that progress seems small or slow. Unsuccessful people, on the other hand, are often waiting for the right time, the right circumstances, the right amount of knowledge or skill or confidence. They're waiting for perfection, and as a result, they never get started. Let me tell you something: there will never be a perfect time. There will never be perfect circumstances. You will never have perfect knowledge or skill or confidence. The only perfect day to get started was yesterday. The second best day is today. I want to talk for a moment about fear, because it's often what hides behind our pursuit of perfection. We're afraid of failure, afraid of criticism, afraid of not measuring up. So we tell ourselves we need to wait to prepare more to become perfect before we put ourselves out there. But here's the truth: courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the judgment that something else is more important than fear. And progress, growth, achievement, these things are more important than the fear of imperfection. You know what's interesting about fear? It diminishes with action. The more you do the thing you're afraid of, the less power that fear has over you. But if you wait for the fear to go away before you act, you'll be waiting forever. So how do you overcome the fear that keeps you stuck in the pursuit of perfection? You take action. Small actions at first perhaps, but actions nonetheless. You focus on progress, not perfection. You celebrate each step forward, no matter how small. And gradually the fear loses its grip on you. I want to share a powerful question that can help you break free from the paralysis of perfectionism. When you find yourself hesitating, procrastinating, waiting for perfect conditions, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen if I take imperfect action? Usually the answer is far less catastrophic than your fears would have you believe. Maybe you'll make a mistake. Maybe you'll face criticism. Maybe you'll need to revise your approach. But are any of these outcomes worse than the certain result of taking no action at all, which is no progress whatsoever? I've found that people often overestimate the risk of action and underestimate the risk of inaction. They worry about what might go wrong if they take imperfect action, but they fail to consider what will definitely go wrong if they take no action at all. The risk of action might be temporary embarrassment or setback. The risk of inaction is permanent regret and unrealized potential. When you look at it that way, the choice becomes clear, doesn't it? Let me tell you about something I call the slight edge. It's the idea that small, seemingly insignificant actions, when performed consistently over time, can create dramatic results. These are actions so small that they're easy to do, but also easy not to do. And that's where most people go wrong. Reading 10 pages of a good book is easy to do, but it's also easy not to do. Saving a few dollars a day is easy to do, but it's also easy not to do. Making one sales call, writing one page, exercising for 15 minutes, all of these things are easy to do, but also easy not to do. The difference between success and failure often comes down to which of those choices you make consistently. Do you take the easy, progressive actions that compound over time? Or do you skip them, waiting for the perfect moment to take massive action that never comes? The fascinating thing about the slight edge is that its effects aren't visible at first. The person who reads 10 pages a day doesn't seem any smarter than the person who doesn't read at all for a while. The person who saves a few dollars a day doesn't seem any wealthier than the person who saves nothing for a while. The person who exercises for 15 minutes a day doesn't seem any healthier than the person who sits on the couch for a while. But over time, these small differences in daily habits create an enormous gap in results. That's the power of progress. It might be invisible at first, but given enough time, it becomes undeniable. I want to talk about another aspect of this progress over perfection philosophy, the importance of starting before you feel ready. Most people never get started because they're waiting until they feel confident, prepared, ready. But here's the secret. That feeling of readiness usually comes after you start, not before. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. No amount of preparation, study, or mental rehearsal can make you feel completely ready for that first wobbly ride. You have to get on the bike and start pedaling. And as you make progress, as you practice, fall, get back up, and try again, you gradually develop the confidence and skill that make you feel ready. The same principle applies to almost everything in life. You don't gain confidence and then take action. You take action and then gain confidence. You don't achieve perfect understanding and then begin. You begin and then develop understanding as you go. You don't eliminate all risk and uncertainty before starting. You start despite the risk and uncertainty and learn to manage them along the way. In other words, don't wait until you're ready to start. Start so that you can become ready. I've met so many people over the years who were getting ready to get ready. They were preparing to prepare. They were planning to plan. They were forever in the preliminary stages, never actually entering the game. Don't let that be you. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Jim, what about planning? Isn't planning important? Absolutely, planning is crucial, but planning should be a springboard to action, not a substitute for it. The purpose of planning is to clarify your direction and first steps, not to eliminate all uncertainty or guarantee perfect execution. I like to think of it this way: a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. Why? Because you can start implementing a good plan today. You can make progress today. You can learn from experience today. And tomorrow, with the benefit of that progress and learning, you can create an even better plan. This brings me to another important point, the value of iteration. Iteration means making continuous improvements based on feedback and experience. It's the opposite of trying to get everything perfect the first time. Think about how technology companies develop products. They don't wait until their product is perfect before releasing it. They create a minimum viable product, put it out into the world, gather feedback, and then iterate based on what they learn. Each version gets better than the last, not because they suddenly achieved perfection, but because they embrace progress. You can apply the same approach to your goals and projects. Don't wait until your business plan, your book, your presentation, your workout routine, or your budget is perfect. Create a good version 1.0. Put it into action, gather feedback, and then create version 1.1, 1.2, and so on. This iterative approach has several advantages. First, it gets you into action quickly, which builds momentum. Second, it allows you to learn from real-world experience rather than theoretical planning. Third, it keeps you flexible and adaptable, which is crucial in our rapidly changing world. And fourth, it focuses your attention on progress rather than perfection, which is a much more motivating and sustainable mindset. I want to emphasize that last point. A progress-oriented mindset is far more sustainable than a perfection-oriented mindset. Why? Because progress is attainable, perfection is not. When you focus on progress, you can experience the satisfaction of achievement every day. When you focus on perfection, you're setting yourself up for perpetual frustration. Think about how this plays out in real life. The person who's trying to lose weight and focuses on perfection might say, I need to follow this diet perfectly. I can never slip up. I need to exercise intensively every day. What happens when they inevitably fall short of this impossible standard? They feel like a failure. They get discouraged. They might give up entirely. But the person who focuses on progress might say, I'm going to make better food choices most of the time. I'm going to be more active than I was before. I'm going to celebrate each pound lost, each healthy habit developed. When they slip up, as everyone does, they see it as a temporary setback, not a catastrophic failure. They adjust course and keep moving forward. Which approach do you think is more likely to lead to lasting change? I've seen this pattern play out in every area of life, from business to relationships to personal development. The perfectionists start strong but burn out quickly. The progressionists may start more modestly, but they keep going and going and going and going. And in the long run, it's not even close. The progressionists win every time. So if progress is better than perfection, how do you become more progress-oriented in your approach to life? Let me offer a few practical strategies. First, focus on systems rather than goals. A goal is an outcome you want to achieve. A system is the process that leads to that outcome. When you focus primarily on the goal, you're constantly evaluating whether you've reached perfection yet. When you focus on the system, you're turning your attention to the daily progress that ultimately leads to success. For example, if your goal is to write a book, your system might be to write 500 words a day. If your goal is to lose 30 pounds, your system might be to walk for 30 minutes and eat vegetables with every meal. If your goal is to build a successful business, your system might be to have 5 sales conversations every day. By focusing on the system, the daily actions that represent progress, you take your attention away from the gap between where you are and where you want to be, which can be discouraging, and place it instead on what you can control right now, which is empowering. Second, break big goals into small, manageable steps. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, as the saying goes. But it continues with another step and another and another. Progress is about taking those steps consistently, not trying to leap the entire 1,000 miles in one bound. When you break a big goal into small steps, you make progress more visible and achievement more frequent. Instead of waiting months or years to celebrate reaching your ultimate goal, you can celebrate each step along the way. This provides the positive reinforcement that keeps you motivated and engaged. Third, measure your progress. As the saying goes, what gets measured gets managed. When you track your progress, you make it visible and concrete. You create evidence of your advancement, which can be incredibly motivating when the going gets tough. There are many ways to measure progress. You might keep a journal, use a habit tracking app, take regular assessments or measurements, or simply reflect at the end of each day or week on what you've accomplished. The specific method isn't as important as the practice of regular reflection and acknowledgement of your progress. Fourth, celebrate your wins no matter how small. Each step forward deserves recognition. Each bit of progress is a victory. By celebrating these small wins, you create positive associations with the actions that lead to progress, which makes it more likely that you'll continue taking those actions. Celebration doesn't have to be elaborate. It might be as simple as acknowledging your progress to yourself, sharing your achievement with a supportive friend, or giving yourself a small reward. The important thing is to recognize and appreciate your forward movement. Fifth, learn to embrace imperfection. This might be the most challenging strategy of all, especially if you've been conditioned to strive for perfection. But it's also the most liberating when you accept that imperfection is not only inevitable but also valuable, because it indicates that you're taking action and learning. You free yourself from the paralysis of perfectionism. Embracing imperfection doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means understanding that the path to excellence involves many imperfect attempts. It means valuing progress over flawlessness. It means being willing to be a beginner, to be vulnerable, to make mistakes in public. It means choosing courage over comfort. I want to share a powerful metaphor that might help you understand the value of progress over perfection. Think of a rocket going to the moon. Do you know how much time that rocket spends on course? Only about 2 to 3% of the time. The rest of the time, it's off course, making constant adjustments to get back on track. But here's the key. Despite being off course 97 to 98% of the time, the rocket still reaches the moon. How? By continually monitoring its position and making small corrections. By focusing not on perfect navigation, but on consistent progress toward the target. Your journey toward your goals works the same way. You won't follow a perfect straight line from where you are to where you want to be. You'll veer off course, you'll make mistakes, you'll encounter unexpected obstacles. But if you keep monitoring your progress and making adjustments, you'll reach your destination eventually. The perfectionist gets frustrated and gives up when they realize they're off course. The progressionist expects to be off course most of the time and builds adjustment into their system. Let me tell you something else about progress that might surprise you. It's often nonlinear. We tend to think of progress as a straight, steady upward line, with each day bringing a little more advancement than the day before. But that's not how it usually works in real life. In real life, progress often follows what's called an S-curve. There's a slow start as you're learning the basics. Then there's a period of rapid growth as you gain momentum and expertise. Finally, there's a plateau as you reach mastery in that particular area. Understanding this pattern can help you stay motivated when progress seems slow. If you're in the early part of the S-curve, know that your seemingly small efforts are building a foundation for accelerated progress later. If you're in the plateau phase, it might be time to set new challenges to begin a new S-curve. The important thing is to keep making progress, even when that progress isn't as fast or as visible as you'd like. Remember the bamboo tree. Remember that meaningful growth often happens underground, out of sight, before it to the world. I want to leave you with a few final thoughts about this idea that progress is better than perfection. First, remember that perfection is subjective and often arbitrary. What's perfect to you might be flawed to someone else and vice versa. But progress is objective. You can measure it, track it, see it. It's real. Second, understand that the pursuit of perfection often stems from a desire for approval or a fear of criticism. But true fulfillment comes not from meeting external standards, but from knowing that you're growing, learning, advancing, making progress toward your own definition of success. Third, recognize that embracing progress over perfection is not just about achieving goals more effectively. It's about enjoying the journey more fully. When you focus on progress, you can find satisfaction and joy in each step forward, rather than delaying all gratification until you reach some distant ideal of perfection. And finally, remember, this perfection is a destination, but progress is a journey. And life itself is a journey, not a destination. By embracing progress over perfection, you align yourself with the fundamental nature of life, which is constant growth and change. So I challenge you today, let go of the need to be perfect. Embrace the power of progress. Take that first step, then another, then another. Celebrate each bit of advancement. Learn from your mistakes. Adjust your course as needed, and keep moving forward. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being perfect. It's about being better today than you were yesterday. It's about growth. It's about learning. It's about becoming the best version of yourself, one small step at a time. Progress is better than perfection. It's more achievable, more sustainable, more enjoyable, and ultimately more effective. So choose progress, choose action, choose growth, and watch as your life transforms, not overnight, but day by day, step by step, bit by bit, until one day you look back and are amazed at how far you've come. Thank you.